Hello everybody and welcome back. So yesterday's Richter report, I had so many of you coming back and Facebook messaging me and putting it into the private messages all about how much you loved yesterday's Richter report on Just Mercy. If you missed it, go back into yesterday. For all this week, what I want to do, I am setting the intention of covering something that has impacted us to see Black culture, not just African American, but Black culture, whether it be in America, Canada, around the world, in a different way. I set my intention yesterday. It's been a resounding success, and it is, when you don't know what to do the thing that you know how to do. And that is perfect because it brings me to the segue of what I wanted to speak about today. Yesterday, I asked everyone to give me a vote, and a few people did into private messaging or just in general were texting me, letting me know. I gave you the choice of any one of these Toni Morrison books, and as I even opened one of these up, I opened it up and, it had I like to keep bookmarks that take the place of where I was at the time, just for a memory and a keepsake. I have a ticket stub here from a flight that, it has my maiden name, so that goes to show how long ago this was. I haven't been that name since, 1998, so I don't know when I read this book, but probably 95. If any of you know Toni Morrison, so Toni Morrison is sort of the voice of Black culture. Now, here's the thing. She writes primarily about the woman's experience. And here's the thing. So I gave everyone the choice. The resounding vote came in for Toni Morrison's Beloved. Toni Morrison's Beloved is a book that was written about a woman who was a slave, and she tried to get away from her plantation. She tried to run away and escape to Canada through the Underground Railroad. And her master, her slave owner, who they called the school teacher, found her and dragged her back. And en route, she actually was so desperate to not have her sons killed or raised on that plantation, raised as slaves, that she actually killed them. And then this sort of explores this proud and beautiful woman who has to go to that extent so that her sons aren't raised as slaves. Just goes to show you to what extent will someone go in order to save their identity or their pride. And at what point, does the human spirit break? Like, at how much can it take? But the great thing is, I did remember that Toni Morrison's Beloved was a movie. I never saw the movie, but I thought, hey, that'll be kind of fun. If I'm going to do a book report or a Richter report on Beloved, let me go back and watch the movie. I remember the movie. Hello! I remember the movie actually had Oprah Winfrey as the star. And I went to go look for it yesterday, and it wasn't on Netflix, but as I was typing in the search bar looking for Toni Morrison, I actually found out that there's a documentary on Toni Morrison on Netflix. And I thought, how perfect. Here I am doing this whole awareness piece on, the Black experience. And here was Toni Morrison, who is the quintessential writer of the Black experience. She sort of created, kind of like a Mark Twain. She was the voice of a generation. And I watched this documentary. It's called The Pieces I Am. And it is the documentary of how Toni Morrison got to be this brilliant poetess, the sage, the seer of the Black experience in America. And it actually talked about how Toni Morrison started, she was raised not really seeing gender or class division. She was raised in a neighborhood full of immigrants, and she felt like there were no outsiders because everyone was an outsider. And her experience actually didn't catalyze until she got much older and she went to Howard University, which is an all-Black university. And suddenly she started seeing the segmenting within the Black community of the class system that came in inherent in that community. And that had her start to explore who she is and how her voice was different, how the Black experience was very different from the other immigrant, who came willfully or who came, America was a pull factor for them rather than, they came actually willingly. They came to escape persecution. Other immigrants came to America as this land of the free and home of the brave. There was a pull factor coming for them. And the Black experience is not that. The Black experience has a very, very different root and a very different catalyst, and how that shapes. So she started actually being an editor at Random House, and she thought, while she was being an editor, this is the power of this woman. She actually catalyzed, she held the hand, she established these strong relationships with some of the biggest names that we know, and she actually had them become the game changers that they are. Angela Davies and a few of the other authors from the 70s that were, during the Black Panther riots and during the Women's Revolution. And there was Toni Morrison sitting in her Random House desk feeling guilty for why isn't it that she can go out and protest? Why can't she hit the streets and make change? And she realized she could make change. She could make change by doing what she knows, which, as you know, that's something I'm a strong believer in. And so she started writing. She wrote Sula, and then she wrote The Bluest Eye, about the experience of her being a young girl, an 11-year-old girl in Ohio, and hearing a friend of hers say that she doesn't believe in God anymore, revoke God, or sort of, renounce God. And when Toni Morrison said to her, like questioning, how can you not believe in God? The girl said, well, I've been praying for blue eyes, and God hasn't given them to me yet, so I know that there is no God. And Toni Morrison looked at her and said, she could not understand how this beautiful, beautiful Black girl could consider herself any less beautiful in the eyes of God because of something as silly and inconsequential as a color of an eye. And that story stuck with her since she was 11, and that became this book later on. And as I was watching this documentary, I highly recommend it. It talked about all of the stories that she collected. That's one of the things that when I'm working with authors, start collecting those stories, see something in a magazine or a newspaper one time or anything. And that's actually how, so she was saying about this book, for instance, Paradise, she has a letter from a jail where they sent her, and she has it sitting in her bathroom, a letter from a jail that she framed that said, we cannot let our inmates read this. They will start a riot. And Toni Morrison said, here I was thinking that I don't have the power because I wasn't marching in the street and protesting, and yet I have the power to start a riot with my words. That is true power. And then, of course, the book that she's most noted for is Beloved. As I was mentioning, the book about the slave mother who killed her children, and how magnificent of a story, and it went on to become a movie starring Oprah Winfrey. And she actually won the Nobel Prize for this book. And we can see also that the power of this book is not just the power of the Black experience. You've got to consider that Toni Morrison was coming up in an age, she was writing in the 70s. The literary world was a very, very stale, pale, and male place at that time. I mean, we had like Faulkner and Hemingway, like these were old, stale kind of writers. And here was Toni Morrison coming in with this language and this style and this, experience. And she was being knocked. She was getting criticized. Like, she was a woman and a Black woman. And how dare she tell the experience, not just of women, but of slaves, of the, it was not like, she was a game changer. She was pushing the boundaries. Today we look at it and we think like Toni Morrison, classic literary, but at the time that she was writing, we got to consider how incredible, how she changed the game, how she bust through that glass ceiling, how her voice was like instrumental in everything that we know today. And, you know, I highly, highly recommend not only reading Toni Morrison, because it'll give you an understanding of the Black experience a little bit more, a little more insight that you may not have had, but here's the easy way out. If you can't read all of these Toni Morrisons, I have some somewhere else in the house and I can't find them, but if you can't read all of the canon of Toni Morrison's work and understand everything, watch the documentary on Netflix about Toni Morrison. It's as if she has a crystal ball and she knew that we would need to have a Toni Morrison documentary. It was made in 2019, and so it's as if she was just on the cutting edge of knowing that we would be interested today in understanding a little bit, peer into the Black experience in America, peer into what it is, not just to be a writer, a woman writer, but a Black woman writer in America. I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, the Toni Morrison documentary, Pieces of Me, The Pieces That I Am, I should say. I highly recommend it. And if you have the opportunity, the inclination, read some Toni Morrison. Tomorrow, I'm coming back with another Richter report, actually on a book that my daughter was reading and that I picked up. And I think that every single kid should read this book, and every parent should read this book to their kids. So until next time, read on. See you later.